To our regular scheduled Wednesday finance meetings. These have been going on for a number of years now to address issues about the fiscal health of the county, ways in which we can bring our costs and revenues into alignment. Much of our discussion has focused on issues that arose from the PFM study. We have branched out accordingly to continue the search for a structural balance between revenues and costs. One of the big things we know is very important to the county is expansion of revenues through economic growth. And while many people, the uninitiated, think that Cumberland County's greatest resource is I-81, and that our economy is best suited for logistics, while that may be in fact partially the case. In fact, we have a very thriving, strong agricultural sector too. And we have with us today our friends from Penn State University Extension Service to talk about agriculture and its contribution to the economic development of Cumberland County. So without further ado, I'll turn this over to Dave.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I have two videos we made that we'd like to show you today that highlight the way that we work with agricultural producers and how that ends up contributing to economic development. And some of the stars of the shows are with us here today. These folks who came with me today all work out of the Cumberland office of Penn State Extension. They are employees of the university, paid by the university, and so I will let them introduce themselves and the areas in which they work with our farm producers. And these guys are literally so busy that very seldom are we in the same place at the same time. You can count in a year's time on kind of one hand or two hands when we're all together. So
extension meetings.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Board
We need that.
They're
The board meetings. We need that.
Somebody's usually not there.
Somebody's
They're off doing something. So
We go to the board meetings for you.
There you go. That's good. Thanks.
Anyhow, I will let them start leading with it.
Hi, I'm Amy Galford. I'm a water resources educator, so I cover a lot of topics with homeowners as far as private water wells and septic systems. I've also gotten into working with producers on irrigation and water quality.
And you do some work on stormwater management and with some municipalities in the county?
Yeah, and generally with the topic of source water protection, which is usually geared towards public water supplies, so looking at their entire watershed, because most water suppliers, whether it's a private company or a municipality, they don't own the entire watershed that they get the drinking water from. So they need to look at voluntary measures that they can have, including education with people and businesses out in the watershed to come up with plans for how to protect drinking water. So I'm also involved with that.
Some of you met, you remember Steve from when we had our tomato tour some time ago. Steve?
I'm Steve Bogash, and I'm a commercial horticulture educator, researcher, and as I keep telling people, also one of the most important parts that I do is I'm an eater. The flavor of things means so much from the marketing perspective. As we were talking this morning, this locally grown movement has gotten to be such a big deal, and you could draw about a 150-mile circle around locally grown. So the quality and the flavor of the food has gotten to be a really important part of what we look for as we're doing this, which is why we've been running tomato variety trials now since 2000. A lot of them at our Mannheim Research Farm. Many of our Cumberland County and Cumberland Valley growers rely on the work we do at the farm there for their local applied information, which they bring back to the farms. So a lot of the work that we do is simply trying to bring them the latest technology, the newest varieties, how to utilize, I work with Amy on how to utilize water and improve their water quality, and pest management. With the rains that we've been having, they're kind of a blessing, but on the other hand, as our tour this morning was reminding us, they're putting everybody behind on field work right now too. It's getting to be a mess out there. So helping folks get over all those hurdles is a big part of what I do.
I'm Heather Reeks. I am a dairy profitability educator based out of the Cumberland County office. And everyone always asks me when I tell them my title, is it possible to be profitable in dairy? And you say, well, yes, if you're a good manager. And so what Tim and I do mostly is we work with farms that are looking to do some type of transformation or some type of transition, farms that are doing expansions, startup dairies, farms that are buying other farms, that sort of thing. If they're looking to make major transitions on their farms, we consult with them on that. And I also do a lot of work this past year when the Agricultural Act was signed, the Farm Bill, doing farm education on the new dairy title that was in that. And I do some Hispanic labor training, working with human resources and being fluent in Spanish. We do a lot of one-on-one farmer trainings, going out and doing either milk quality assessments or human research trainings with that. So those are some of the things that I focus on. And we cover the whole state. We try to work remotely when we can, and then we cover most of South Central PA in our cars.
Tim Beck, I'm a dairy business management educator. We do very similar work. We spend a lot of our time at farms, actually helping them specifically lay out business plans for things that they're going to work on. And so most of that effort is either expanding the farm, as Heather said, or starting up new dairies, or doing troubleshooting. What's maybe unique in our work over, say, what a person would get from their accountant would be that we try to integrate the production aspects of dairy with finance. And so we have knowledge of how to change the actual management practices on the farm to improve finance. And that's something that others don't always have the ability to offer. Farms have a background in dairy nutrition, and so I have a strong understanding and interest in crop management and how it relates to nutrition of the cow, and then in turn how that affects the ability to be profitable in the dairy. So we try to give a systems look to dairy as a whole farming system and how it fits together, or where it needs to be improved if it isn't working, so that the farm can become profitable. So that's our focus. And it's a full-time job. Milk price is quite cyclical, and this is our low time in the milk price cycle. So this will be a challenging year for our dairymen. Last year was an exceptionally good year, but it changes very dramatically over a 6 to 8 month period on a fairly regular interval of about 3 years. So it keeps us quite busy just with that aspect of how to manage risk and keep your finances together for the low year that you expect to happen.
Milk price dropped 20%
This
more
year.
months this year.
Yes.
So at this point, I'd like to show you the videos and then have a discussion or questions you might have on that. So can we do the water one first, please? The producer that's featured in this video is from the Shippensburg area.
I've been working with Penn State for about 20 years, and for about 18 years since Steve came in the Franklin County Extension, we have been working together as a team, and I think Steve has been very helpful in a lot of aspects. Tomatoes are a very important crop to our farm, and high quality of fruit is always very important, and I think they do a good job on research that helps us do a better job in producing quality fruits and vegetables, and also the horticultural line.
Penn State Extension is an outreach arm of the Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences. We provide practical information to growers and other Pennsylvanians based on research conducted at Penn State, other land-grant universities, and government research agencies. Penn State Extension is a network of faculty and staff on campus and educators spread across Pennsylvania in county-based offices and our regional research farms. South Central Pennsylvania is a major area of commercial fruit, vegetable, and flower production. One of the factors that has helped to stimulate this area into a produce and flower powerhouse is that nearly 60% of the U.S. population is within 12 driving hours using our extensive highway network. Hi, I'm Steve Bogash, a commercial horticulture educator with Penn State Extension. I've been a commercial horticulture educator and researcher with Penn State for nearly 18 years. My focus is on improving vegetable crops and helping growers adopt new practices. Like my Penn State Extension colleagues, I teach workshops to growers to keep them up to date on the latest practices and to help new growers get started. Strawberries are a vital part of the early cash flow here in the valley.
about 10 years ago, we were having problems with getting quality plugs.
We put together a team that included faculty extension and land grant contracts and helped Ruben get started.
We feel that we have been able to maintain a quality plug for our own use and for other farmers in Pennsylvania and surrounding states.
Water quality and quantity are vital issues in producing high-quality produce. The Extension family of specialists includes members of our water team. Their support has been one part of the structure that has helped to grow horticulture in the Cumberland Valley.
Water is a vital part of agriculture, especially for crops that depend on irrigation. Strawberry transplants and other crops that are grown in the greenhouse are sheltered from the rain, and so they need to be watered. Strawberry plants out in the field can be watered using a drip irrigation system, and that's an efficient way to get water right to the roots where it's needed without increasing plant disease. Hi, I'm Amy Gelford. I'm a water resources educator for Penn State Extension based in the Cumberland County office, and I work throughout this region. I'm part of the state water resources and extension team, and we've been developing new partnerships with the horticulture educators at Penn State Extension to improve the information we provide growers about water quality, water treatment, and food safety issues. The Cumberland Valley has limestone-based soils that are great for growing some crops, but minerals that dissolve change the water chemistry in ways that can make it difficult to grow other crops.
Water quality has been on my mind for quite a few years, and we started using this little tool here. Will give me a reading on water quality for the plants, the pH, the EC, which is the nutrients in the water. And I think this tool is always handy for me, and it's very easy to use.
Ruben hosted a meeting here at Maplewood Produce for growers to come and learn about the strawberry varieties he's growing out in his fields, and also to learn from Extension about the role that irrigation water can play in growing their crops. Farmers brought in their own samples to be tested, and some of them were surprised by the results that they got and took home with them that night. Flowers such as petunias actually like acidic irrigation water, and Ruben was already adjusting the pH of his water for growing flowers. It turns out that tomatoes also prefer acidic irrigation water, and it can affect how they take up nutrients like potassium. If they can't take up those nutrients, they can actually end up with poor quality fruit that's unmarketable. So Ruben worked with Steve to improve the quality of his irrigation water, and therefore improve the quality of the tomatoes he was selling.
We made these videos to show you because part of our program is fairly visible and understandable to the public, like our 4-H program or Master Gardener program. There's a lot of local press about that. People are involved as volunteers. The kind of work we do with these producers, very technical oriented, is not as obvious to the general public, and so that's one reason why we made these. Just to help you see the way that we're working with some of these producers. So I don't know if you have any comments or questions for Amy or Steve before we watch the other video.
And if I could, before we, a little about Ruben, the strawberry transplant situation that he had named, about 8 years ago, our big strawberry plant producer, it takes almost 15,000 plants to plant an acre. They were out of Maryland's Eastern Shore. They went out of business. They got overcapitalized. Hey, he owed a lot of money. He went down, left a lot of people without plants. And so work that we did with Ruben over 3 years turned that around into a situation where here in the valley, Ruben sells over 1 million strawberry transplants a year now into Maryland, Delaware, and parts of Lancaster County. So that's become a major operation for him. So we were able to turn around a major negative, and now we have cash coming into the valley based on that operation.
But if not, we can watch the other dairy video.
We've been working on a project, and it's been running here for 2 years. This is a robotic freestall barn, and of course the cost analysis and feasibility studies are essential parts of any type of an expansion growth plan. And through the whole process, it actually became clearer that if we didn't do something, we were not going to be able to survive as a dairy farm.
Penn State Extension is an outreach initiative of the Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences. A network of faculty and staff on campus and educators based throughout the state provide information to all sectors of the food system, from production through processing to marketing and consumer education. The result of this work contributes to the economic success of the food system in the state and helps improve quality of life for those producing and consuming food. In short, Penn State Extension brings value to the communities and counties in Pennsylvania.
We started working with Dave, Tim, and Heather because we were rapidly expanding our operations here. Not only was our dairy farm growing, but we were also growing our on-farm processing. And we just really were looking to get some expertise and to get a wider perspective. Rather than just looking at our own operation day in and day out, we wanted to look at it and see what other operations were doing and get some of their insights on that.
Probably one of the largest challenges dairy farmers have is they have multiple responsibilities for the day-to-day operation of the dairy farm. They manage and grow crops, they are responsible for harvesting those crops, and with everything going on, the financial record keeping of the farm is usually one of their least attractive jobs.
Tim also helping us get solid budgets set up and be able to implement them with our current financial accounting system so we could just really take that to the next level and just do a better job of tracking our operations here.
As dairy farmers, we really need those kind of tools. We need the people that have those skill sets and are really looking hard at what it takes to manage and grow the dairy industry in Pennsylvania. I think we would not be where we are today if it were not for individuals like Tim and Heather and Dan who worked with us to constantly bring about the improvements and the advice that we need.
One of the great things about being a dairy business management educator is that we get to work with farms to help them be better at what they do. One of the farms we work with is Apple Valley Creamery. They are a raising 80-cow dairy here in South Central Pennsylvania, and they also home bottle their milk and sell direct to consumers. So we get to work with them to help improve their budgets, improve their record keeping, and ultimately help them make better business decisions for their farms.
Penn State Extension is really a valuable tool. They're accessible. They do have the database. They work on numerous facilities. There's just a lot of information that is available. And of course, they're, again, very hands-on, ready to solve problems, ready to be there to take a look at things, make an unbiased assessment of what needs to be done, and giving some good constructive criticism even. And I think those are the things that we need. We as a dairy industry obviously have to be looking outside the box. I think it really helps us to have a broader picture of the industry.
The thing that I'm the most excited about working with Penn State Extension on is the fact that they're bringing expertise that I just don't have and that we just don't have. They're bringing the latest data coming from the educational world, the latest trends that we can pick up on them, and they're just gaining us a wider perspective on everything in the dairy industry as a whole that I just can't see when I just sit here and my own operations behind my own desk.
So how did Amy get the strawberries in the summer and Heather gets the dairy in the winter?
You know what, that was actually one of the coldest days of the year, and I highly recommend spending a day in early February inside of a greenhouse. That's why I was dressed in a turtleneck though I was in the greenhouse, because it was absolutely freezing that day, but we quite enjoyed being in the greenhouse.
I guess us dairy guys just picked the wrong side.
Just ask.
On the two farms featured in the dairy one, the larger farm that had robotic milkers that Tim and Heather worked with is actually down in Morgantown, right off the turnpike there. The other farm that bottles her own milk that Heather and Tim and I work with is Apple Valley Creamery down East Berlin. We could have, we do the same kind of work with several dairy farms in Cumberland County as well. I believe that Brandon Weary would say the same thing on tape as those folks did about the way we've helped them expand over the years. So that kind of work that you see reflected in that video is occurring in Cumberland County as well. They just didn't have producers featured on the video. So.
And they mentioned Dan in the video, and that's Dan McFarland, who's in Lancaster County.
Dan is, I was about to say, thanks for that, Amy. Dan McFarland is an ag engineer. He's based out of York County, but he covers an 8-county region in southeast PA, and he specializes in working with farms on all of the engineering things related to an expansion or any types of cow comfort, ventilation, the entire basically system, and he spends almost all of his time on farms. You'll never find him in the office, just like you won't find Tim or Steve or myself in the office as much.
During your introduction, I think you said that dairy prices are down 20% over the last 4 months.
They
What's
dropped
that?
between summer and
Dairy or
January.
milk?
Milk prices.
Milk prices,
Yes.
which ultimately will probably spill over to other products related to milk. But, so it's down 20% in 4 months.
Yeah, it dropped from, milk is marketed on a 100-weight basis, 100 pounds of milk. And 100 pounds of milk in the summer, 2014 averaged about $24. And in January, it was down to $16, $17.
And that's from the milk price fixing board.
That's the
That's
class 3 milk.
That is just,
That's,
No,
that's not
the
necessarily
trends
what
that, there are a couple trends that cause that. We have an oversupply, so the price went down. The reason we have an oversupply is we have a strong dollar, so it limits exports. Last year, we exported 15% of our national milk supply overseas. We're not doing that this year because the dollar strengthened last year. So countries go elsewhere to buy their milk. Last year at this time, China was buying huge quantities of milk powder from America. China stopped all their purchases from America. So that volatility in the export market really changes the price to our local farmers. Additionally, in the Northeast here, for some time, you probably read about the Chobani Greek yogurt in New York and the amount of milk that they were taking from the market. They built a plant in Idaho, and they shifted 90% of their production to the Idaho plant. So all the milk that had been going to Chobani for making Greek yogurt was now back on the market here in the Northeast. So the plant you visited in Mount Holly, the Mount Lakes plant, has been, since Christmas, has been working gangbusters, taking this extra milk, turning it into butter and powder.
So
and
Dan,
I'm consuming the butter left and right. I just am.
so Dan, one of the things, we always talk about in terms of CADIC and economic development, is the whole notion of business retention. Sometimes, it's a great concept. There's clearly there are market forces that are, pretty difficult to contend with. Maybe you could give us some insight on that relocation of the Greek yogurt place. And as a strictly academic exercise, would there have been or could there have been something done to kept them on the East Coast rather than moving out to, of all places, where we all know that it's infested with potatoes?
But it's also one of the largest milk producing states in the country.
There you go.
Yeah, surprisingly, a generation ago, a bunch of big dairy farmers from Tulare County in the Central Valley of California moved to Idaho because they had really cheap land and they could make milk really cheaply with very little overhead. And a few years ago, Idaho, I think, bumped us. They actually started making more milk than we did as a state because that southern Idaho now has a whole lot of dairy cattle.
Do they get it out by rail or do they get it out by truck?
And there's nobody to drink it. So it all has, every bit of it has to be every bit of it has to be manufactured.
Okay.
So they don't have the cost of shipping the fluid milk. They turn it into yogurt
Something else.
or milk powder or cheese or
Okay.
something, because when you establish a huge dairy industry in a place like Idaho, who's around to break the milk? Nobody.
Right.
So it all has to be manufactured products.
So is the move based on just the fact that the costs go lower out there?
Yeah.
So don't they have more water available in Idaho than Central Valley? That was probably a big
Oh, that
issue.
original idea of moving
Yeah.
from California to Idaho.
Yeah, there's so much water.
So, all right, but it just, again, in terms of policy, it sounds like the market forces are pretty overwhelming in Idaho for this particular niche thing, okay? Of a yogurt manufacturer, which is valued to the raw product, would have been pretty tough to convince them to stay where they were. Is that the case?
Yeah, and this sounds really weird, but actually a big part of that, Larry, since you're kind of proving that, was that Chobani Yogurt is a very closely held company with one guy. And honestly, in hindsight, people in the industry realize now that one of the reasons he went there and built that plant and moved to production there was because the plant in New York was part of a divorce agreement, a very nasty divorce settlement with his wife.
I could tell them all about that.
Well, I mean, this sounds really crazy that you would make major, multi-millions of dollars investments in company strategies, but when something is that closely held as a company with no other investors and you're in the middle of a situation like that, it seems clear that that was one of, notwithstanding the other market forces, there was a reason for that outside of market forces. So you kept probing, so I had to kind of check.
No, that's great. I'm convinced the divorce is one of the more tumultuous events.
It is, yeah. So apparently, and I don't know that that is even settled yet, but it was a very public and very nasty situation between this guy who made Greek yogurt famous and his wife. So.
Let me ask another topic. Bird flu,
Yes.
okay? Just in general, if you could, what you pick up in the media.
A couple
what
real
could
brief
be,
statements.
Yeah, impact.
The bird flu can be transferred in a local neighborhood from farm to farm by any vector, dog, cat, carrying the virus, people, whatever. But the way that bird flu or avian influenza is transferred over long distances is between migratory waterfowl. Because the virus that kills turkeys and chickens can reside in ducks and geese and not harm them. So when you look at a map of where all the avian influenza infections are in the United States right now, they all are over the middle North American flyway, migratory bird flyway. So up over Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, that's the route north for migratory waterfowl. And it's obvious that that's how when those birds that are carrying the virus land during their migration, they can deposit the virus in an area. So when farms get it in Iowa and 2 weeks later farms get it in Minnesota, how did the disease get that fast, that far apart? It's migratory waterfowl. Now, the people in Pennsylvania, what we are really concerned about, obviously someone could bring the virus, a person or a truck or something could bring the virus from Iowa to Pennsylvania, but what we're really concerned about is this fall and early winter, because the migratory waterfowl that use the eastern flyways are now in the Arctic mixing with those infected ones from the center flyways. So as those birds that use the eastern flyways fly south this fall and migrate back and further south, they'll be stopping in Pennsylvania and they will have had the opportunity to pick up the virus while they've been in the Arctic this summer. So our industry is very much on the alert starting this fall. Not that they aren't now, but we really think there could be potential for disease pressure as those migratory waterfowl migrate back south during the fall and early winter. So
How long is it,
that's where we're at.
What's the sort of life obviously cycle, but what's the life length of this thing? I mean, does a bird contract it, die immediately? Is it residual in a couple months? Is it,
Well,
you know,
the problem
past?
is, well, the problem is that when a flock of animals get the influenza virus, you populate them. And within a couple weeks, that particular farm would be free of the virus and ready to repopulate. But the problem is that you have to quarantine an entire area and depopulate it and wait to make sure there's no more outbreaks. And so even though an individual farm could be depopulated and within a couple weeks return to production, you know how close our farms are in south central and southeast Pennsylvania. So anytime there's an outbreak, the 5-mile quarantine affects millions of birds and a large number of farms. And in fact, as backyard poultry has gotten a lot more popular, you know, if we would have a farm in Cumberland County that would test positive for avian and avian influenza, we would have a lot of homeowners who have backyard flocks that would also have to depopulate as well. So we're hoping it doesn't happen. I know that Secretary Redding and the Department of Ag and Dr. Craig Schultz, who's head of the Animal Health Commission, those guys are all being very vigilant about it and very concerned.
But we'll go, but did you say interspecies, like dogs and cats can carry it? They can't. It is only
Well,
within a year.
They can carry it physically and move the virus. It's
Okay.
not like they
Okay.
become infected.
All right.
So.
Just, again, reading it kind of in the news occasionally.
There's a lot of information out there, yeah.
Okay.
So.
So from this morning's presentation and today's presentation, for the sake of notes, it's clear that, in the words of the Grateful Dead, one man gathers when another man spills. We seem to be able to have been, able to pick up business or fill gaps created by changes that are going on in Maryland, or what's Pennsylvania. We talk about California running out of water. Is that too far away to present an opportunity for Pennsylvania agriculture? Or are there things that if we were on our toes and nimble, that we could perhaps do to fill in some of the gaps that might be created?
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so we have Fermanto's Foods here in Pennsylvania. They're a very big tomato processor. They do other products as well. They do dry beans as well. Fermanto's buys all of their paste, just their paste, from California. So here in Pennsylvania, they produce a lot of diced tomatoes and other products, but when it comes to the paste part of it, there's been such a high concentration of tomato growers in the Central Valley that that's a much more efficient. Putting in a paste plant is very expensive. You are taking it, to get to the paste level, you're taking a huge amount of water out of those tomatoes. So they have long found it economic to ship paste from California here that they use in their Fermanto's process. So local tomatoes are part of it, but then paste coming from there. With water becoming more and more limited, that would be an opportunity to expand production. But now, how do we fill that gap with a paste plant? So you've got a high energy, very, very expensive plant to put in that could possibly be some local infrastructure. And there are people, Ken Martin at Fermanto's would be a good person to talk to about that very thing. Ken's one of the vice presidents. He works closely with local growers. In South Central Pennsylvania, we have a good number of growers who are producing 20 to 50 acres of machine-picked tomatoes, but they are all going into only one part of the process. And there's a huge amount of opportunity there for other parts of the process.
So if I've got capital investment in something like a paste production facility, I'm going to be looking at how many years do I have to recoup my investment. Is the projection for the issues in California to be pretty protracted, or is it the kind of thing that if people just didn't water their lawns on alternative Sundays, that it's going to turn around in 5 years?
It's a good question. NOAA says this is a 20-year cycle right now. That even were we to do all of the things that we can do to conserve water, that the current weather cycle looks like they're pretty confident right now that we are in a 20-year downturn in water availability in the Pacific right now, and what's coming ashore. And so if you can't pay off a plant in 20 years, then it probably wasn't a good investment.
But the real issue there is not only this incredible drought that they're having, multi-year drought, but the fact that in the late 1940s, when they first built those reservoirs in the mountains to capture the snow melt and hold all that water and then release it for irrigation all summer long, and by the late 90s and early 2000, the environmental folks through the federal courts required that those reservoirs release water all summer long to try to maintain aquatic life in, like, I think it's the San Joaquin River and some of those. And see, they didn't used to do that.
It's like those mussels in the bridge that you gotta move to redo the bridge.
Right, and so, you know, even if it would start raining tomorrow in California, there's still an issue of water quantity out there because of the water no longer only belongs to Los Angeles and the Central Valley. It now belongs to all of these rivers that in a very arid region, they're trying to keep aquatic life in all year long, and it is taking incredible amounts of water out of those reservoirs that used to be used for agriculture.
And to add to that, those reservoirs that were built in the 40s, they are vastly degraded due to silt. Most of those are less than half the capacity they once were, just due to siltation all by itself. So just to upgrade all those things, it's just not going to happen in California. I mean, to remove all that silt, that's a major environmental nightmare.
I think also, even if the weather changes, it's gonna be a long lifetime before they have the water that they need reliably, because at this point, people are getting into competitive well drilling out there, where they're drilling deeper and deeper wells to hit water, and then they're pumping that, and their neighbor loses water, and so they're, they don't have the surface water, they don't have the snowmelt coming off the mountains, and they're working against their groundwater savings. So it's gonna be a long time before all of those get back.
Are they doing this along the San Andreas Fault?
Well, there's some questions about that. I did read one article that said that one of the biggest threats to water, for some of the big cities in California is earthquake. Because when the water is coming in on those pipes and that's your only source, and that cracks, then that is a risk for them.
You're looking to buy land to the east of that fault, aren't you? New beachfront property.
It's like Luthor in the first.
Yes.
Dave and Steve, what nationally, when you look nationally, where do we stack up? Is the Cumberland Valley really on the map for agriculture? The people, as you mentioned earlier, Steve, about the opportunities with tomatoes, but looking at tomatoes, dairy, other livestock, are we on the map? Are people actively looking to maybe relocate here or say we want to be in the Cumberland Valley? I mean, or are we kind of a small player?
The answer to that is people are attracted to our area because of the water supply, the quality of the soil, and the closeness of the market. And for that reason, we would have, if there was not other extenuating circumstances, we'd have a production ag and a food processing industry that's just off the charts. But we all know the competition for land use in South Central and Southeast Pennsylvania for residential and business and lots of other good uses of land, and so that raises the price. And so someone who would be attracted here and weighing their options and saying, yes, I'm within 2 hours of Philadelphia, I'm within 3 hours of Washington, but can I go to Southern Ohio and buy land for half the price, knowing that my transportation costs are more, but I can grow it out there with an investment that's much less initial investment. So does that make sense, Kirk?
Yeah, it does. I think what I'm trying to get at, and that helps a lot, Dave, is just figuring out how we transform that opportunity into real projects, whether it be business expansions or business retentions. If we have that opportunity in place, as we work on CADIC's economic development strategy, if it's going to be one of our priority industries, are we on the map? And if we are, then how do we kind of communicate the message? And we're open for that type of business and get folks here.
Well, I can tell you from a produce point of view, we are on the map from a fresh market produce perspective in that 12-hour marketing window. I mean, we are an important, and I'm being very specific with the fresh market produce. It's on the outside of the season and processed stuff where our big weakness is. But if you go into any of the Washington D.C. farmers markets, you will find growers in our general area. You have to factor in Adams County as well because of the fruit belt. But you will find us very well represented. If you went to the DuPont Circle farmers market, you wouldn't recognize the addresses there. So any of those markets, the Baltimore markets, the Philadelphia markets, we are very well represented. And because of our representation there, we're also well represented in restaurants and bodegas as well. Because what happens is they come and they meet these growers at the farmers markets, and it's not unusual for before somebody sets up their farmers market stand, they've done 6 or 8 drops of 20 or 30 cases at various smaller markets and restaurants, and then they go set up their farmers market stand. It makes for a real efficient run into those urban areas where you do a lot of drop-offs, then you do your 4 or 6 hours at farmers markets, and you get the secondary market going. So you'll find us there. Where you won't find us is well represented outside of our short growing season in Giant Foods and Wegmans simply because we just don't have volume.
Well, I think I talked about that at the last ag, about the millworks. Their menu touts, 40-mile radius of everything that is brought to you on that menu from this area.
Mm-hmm.
So more and more of those restaurants are, kind of doing that. But I think it goes back to acreage. Having just driven from Carlisle to Green Bay, Wisconsin, I can tell you there is a lot of acreage out there that's available. We just simply don't. And when you came back from your last conference, your dairy presentation was 1,200 head?
12,000.
12,000. I mean, put another zero there. That competition is just never going to happen. But that's not to say that what we do, we can't do better than sort of everybody else.
Right.
So while that little niche is there, then let's ratchet up the quality of that which is, coming out of the valley to the very best that we can. So
nowhere else in the country is a major area of ag food production co-located with a major population center like we have here in the Mid-Atlantic and especially here in South Central Pennsylvania. Nowhere else in the country. You go to the beef, corn, and soybean areas in the Midwest, there's no people there unless you drive into Chicago. You go to the rice producers in southern Arkansas, there's no people there. So this provides a real opportunity for this fresh market. And even though we're saying fresh market, there's still opportunity for food processing in that because, as Steve mentioned this morning, he used the example, people don't want to buy a butternut squash anymore. They want to buy a butternut squash that's already cut up and in a container for them to throw into their frying pan. So,
Frying pan.
well, saute.
He doesn't cook. Dave is not a cook. Just have to.
Sorry.
You're roasting.
All right, I used the wrong word there. I'm sorry.
We'll get him some recipes and teach him how to cook.
limited culinary skills.
That's
Right?
okay.
Just leave it at that.
It doesn't have to be that complete.
Yeah.
It's really great when your staff throws you into the bucket.
It was nicely done.
Yeah.
To get back to what you asked about with respect to dairy, I think there's 2 major things that are going on. Lancaster is the 8th largest dairy county in the country for milk production. And that's just simply because we have a lot of small farms. We have tons and tons, 2,000 small farmers in Lancaster County. And then when you talk about the 8 largest ag counties in the state, and Cumberland being 8th in dairy production as well, that kind of follows the trend. And it's because we don't have that land base. So farms, dairies aren't really looking, especially in the Cumberland Valley, they're not looking to expand. If dairies are looking to increase their production capacity, if they're not going to do it by buying more acres. And the thing with dairy is you can't just buy a bunch of cows, buy in the feed for them, especially in Pennsylvania, that's gonna be cost prohibitive. So dairies are also field crop, forage crop producers as well, and they need to be able to produce that on their land. And so when they're looking for ways to change and adapt to the market, they're not looking to go out and add 500 cows in the Cumberland Valley. That's just not gonna be feasible with our land base. And so they're looking at other ways to either increase production or diversify or contribute to the market in something that's not just a fluid milk wholesale commodity. They're gonna look for home bottling, or they're gonna look for ways that they can work with the market structure and do some type of value-added product or assess it that way. Or they're gonna move to Western PA or Ohio
Let me ask
or
about
Arizona.
that. You mentioned about the land, and that's kind of going back to Dave's point, population centers. We're part of the megalopolis, it's moving this direction, it's not going anywhere other than in our direction. So we all know that does the price of land. So long-term, what does that do to us here in central PA in terms of ag?
Yeah, what I see that does is the people who survive here, and I'm talking out a generation or two now, you know, the people who survive here are able to design a business where they have very high margins, so they're selling very high profit products. So like this morning, we're down at Oak Grove, down there along Williams Grove Road, we toured that. Okay, yes, they're selling some of their production wholesale, but they're also selling a good bit of retail. So when you look at the dollars per acre that they are returning compared to a dairyman who's growing corn to feed his cows, a place like Oak Grove is going to be in business here longer, or is going to be able to afford $20,000 an acre ground more than a dairyman is. At some point, the land will be $20,000 an acre. You know, so my answer to you is that eventually, even though this is a dairy county right now, and that's our major industry, milk production, along with the vegetables and crop, over time, those pressures will see a shift.
You've got to have actually where my question was going, and that is, it's from a public policy standpoint, is the thrust now, by extension, is it less towards simply building efficiency and technical expertise in it, and maybe actually promoting the idea of movement toward different crop choices, different business choices?
Overall, that is a strategic discussion we have, but because of the high specialized capitalization on these farms, you cannot take a farm that's invested $1.5 million in producing milk and turn it around the next year and produce broccoli. Yes, the tractors will work, but a lot of the other stuff won't. When you try to sell that stuff, it's pennies on the dollar. So what we end up doing is that we still try to, through technology, through science, squeeze more efficiency and more production out of those current operations, so they can, afford the higher overhead of being here.
But the shifting of crops is an important question, Gary, and so
It is.
we're watching sweet corn production go down in the valley. Okay, so sweet corn from a vegetable standpoint is probably our least profitable crop. There's X amount of stalks on an acre. You can only get an X amount per dozen. It's pretty well fixed. However, I can get sweet corn growers to translate over to tomatoes, and it's not unusual for an acre of tomatoes to gross $40,000 to $70,000. That's how I start off a lot of my meetings, where I get them to give me their yields, them to give me what they're selling them for, and we start off with that gross, and then we go backwards through production with all of our costs. And so you can do shifts like that and make a major difference in the economy just by going to higher value crops. Now, there's a limit to how many acres of tomatoes you can produce, but with those kind of values, there's an awful lot of working room to help move from a lower profitability crop like sweet corn, which actually ships quite easily, to something like fresh market tomatoes, that a fully ripe fresh market tomato that you would actually want to eat, not that came on your Wendy's sandwich, but one you want to eat.
Now be careful.
We have any stockholders in Wendy's in the room?
These
But-
meetings are publicized.
I had one the other day, it had no flavor to it, I was insulted. But to be able to ship a fully ripe edible tomato, that's a whole other thing. You have a limited place you can ship that to. That's why in the wintertime, when you go in the grocery store and you're getting those trays of 3 or 4 pink tomatoes, and you go home and you're disappointed, that's because they weren't ripe when they were picked. And that's the beauty of this harbor, this Mid-Atlantic harbor, is we can get one of our tomatoes on the street in New York City at $5 a pound or $6 a pound. That's a nice return on growing tomatoes.
How about wine? How about grapes? Are we really gonna get there, ever?
It's
Can we? No.
a growing
Yeah.
it's a growing industry, and they're getting better. He's got to stop shaking his head.
Shaking of the head.
It's
here.
getting better.
Okay.
It's getting better.
But we're not there yet.
No.
Extremely competitive.
Oh yeah, and Heather here's hops is the newest and hottest crop.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
And the
And
Finger
hard
Lakes.
cider.
Yeah.
Up in the Finger Lakes,
True.
there's a proliferation of hop farms,
Yeah.
which just happen to have a brewery.
At any rate, the communications folks are here because I had asked them to take a look at these videos and see if we, with everyone's approval, we could put them on the county site, just so people would be aware of what Extension does. And they've done some work, and I don't know if they have any comments that they want to make at this time about it.
Go ahead. We have put up on the website links referencing Penn State Extension and links to the videos. There's actually 2 web slides that we put up linking to each individual video, talking about the work that they do. So we have done that. And along with that, we're going to do kind of an aggressive social media campaign, putting out some points that were discussed from today. And again, the videos, and really try to promote those videos and promote the work that's going on. So it'll be a good online presence, and hopefully we can pick up some local attention.
So thank you for your help with that.
Thank you for bringing us up with help.
And, part of this is you folks provide some funding for us in partnership with the funding that comes from the college bag. And so we appreciate that. And I just wanted to show you a little bit about what we're doing in this ag side.
Has there been an increase in the number of farmers who are involved in direct retail? I mean, I know that we have, an increase in the number of these farmers markets that are, people, in fact, we got one that's very popular Thursday afternoons now at Atmospheric Heath Park in East Pennsboro Township. And of course, we have one here in Carlisle on Wednesday, today.
Yeah.
And is this a, part of the way that our farmers are moving to, gain additional revenues to actually provide direct-to-consumer sales? Is this something that is increasing, or it's about the same as it's always been?
It's increasing.
Yeah, it's increasing rapidly. The demand for growers to service these farmers markets, the demand far outstrips the number of growers. It's a pretty grueling day. If you think about working a farmer's market versus just being at your farm packaging and shipping or going into your own market, you start picking the day before to load up for market. You got to have the truck ready to roll first thing in the morning, often at 5 or 6 a.m. You're on the street setting up. You do 4 to 6 hours standing on blacktop or pavement to sell. Then you got to pack back up and get back in. And so it's a really tough day. I have a number of my clients who do there's an operation down in Ortana. They do 22 farmers markets every week. And so, but there's a lot of them who do 4 or 5. And so it's become an important part of it. And their evaluation is always the exact same thing. How many dollars did I turn today at this farmer's market? How much material did I go through? And so every farmer's market has this rollover aspect to it. There are guys who are not successful. The one here in town has a personality to it. Some growers do very well at that market and have become fixtures there. Others, you'll see they'll be there for a year or 2 and they move on. It's just not their market. But the growth is huge. And the part that I like most about it is that Baltimore, Washington, and Philadelphia dollars look just like ours. And so, we send our stuff there and they ship back dollars. It's a wonderful exchange. But the demand to do that is very, very high, and there's always new markets opening up. And so I get regular requests for, please send me farmers. So we go down to the freezer, defrost a few more, and ship them in.
Well, I think.
You brought them.
What I've seen is there seems to be a growing, consumer public demand for, fresh, organic. And they're just going out to that, when we toured the tomato plant there, those tomatoes look so much better than some of the stuff that shows up in the grocery store. You see the grocery store, they look like wax or whatever. They don't look like real tomatoes. So I think that, there's a public demand for quality. And that's what I was just curious about, as to whether, that is, essentially the niche where a lot of our farmers might be switching over to more direct-to-consumer operations if it benefits them financially.
The growth is huge, but one of the reasons I wanted you all to go to that operation was to listen to Mark's story.
Yeah.
The mountain that he had to climb to get that operation up, that's, from a public policy standpoint, a lot of the hurdles that he had to go over were things that could have gone smoother. Mark's not the easiest person to deal with. He likes to go running at a wall, but the walls were there, and so he had some real challenges getting it there, and there are probably ways to grease the wheels to make those kind of operations more common here in the valley to make them happen better.
I think going back to what Jim was saying, I think locally, people want to know where their food's coming from.
Oh, yeah.
More and more. They want the security of where their food's coming from. They want the freshness that, the tomato was, here, and a couple hours later, now it's at the, farmer's market. So, balancing that with a responsible price, oftentimes, sort of is the angst too on organic. Everyone sort of sees that too. So I think that those conversations need to continue. That, and you see this also within the food banks. Those who are providing food for those who are not able to necessarily at the moment go into a grocery store and purchase it. That outlet and avenue for the food banks to come into this with some fresh produce, nourishing products that again are local and are contributing back to the community for again those who can't afford it. So
back to Commissioner Herzler's question, one of the things that plays into that, however, is that some of our farmers and food producers have been long-time production specialists, and they're trained in ag mechanics and agronomy, and they know all of that stuff. They're not marketers, and they'd rather go to the hospital than stand in front of people and have to talk to them while they hand them lettuce or something. You know what I mean? That can be, honestly, I'm making, but that is a serious issue. These people are not trained, some of them, as marketers, and they really, even though they know that there's money to be made at some of that, they just don't have skill sets. So oftentimes you see it's the next generation who will take over, the younger folks will start attending markets. So you're right, there is an increasing need and demand from the markets, the public, for this kind of direct sale product. But some of our producers, they've been producers, and it's hard for them to think about being marketers now.
And I think we're right, we're seeing the younger generation, the older generation realizes that there needs to be some change and that there's the opportunity for that. And so where there is a younger generation, there's a big opportunity for that.
Yeah.
If that is possible. I think one thing I forgot to mention earlier was with a lot of small farms comes a lot of family labor and a lot of cultural heritage of the family on the farm. And that's one thing that's keeping this system moving, but how does that next generation fit into that system? And especially when you're bringing in multiple generations, when you have grandpa and dad, the kids all working together, where do they find their niche? In a lot of cases, we're seeing in a lot of small farms that they're starting farm markets or they're branching out, and they are increasing their diversity, and maybe they do have a dairy originally, but they're creating a workshop or they're creating vegetables, and so they're finding ways to fit into that. And one of our challenges is serving them when they have those questions, and so that's something we've been working with the last couple of years, is figuring out how we're going to help these producers be better positioned to reach those markets that are emerging. So.
And there's this balance, and Commissioner Eichelberger, you were getting to it over land values. So while we have this amazing market with 58% of the country in our easy trucking distance here for fresh market products, and when I say fresh market, I'm including cheeses and things like that as well. I mean, everything that comes off the farm. The highest profit is in value-added products. Okay, so you look at the Utz plant over in Hanover. Those potatoes are not grown around here. They're trucking potatoes in, and they're taking tractor trailer loads of potatoes. And if you ever look at how much potato chips are in a bag, a full bag of potato chips is 10 ounces.
Not nearly enough. Not nearly enough.
I'm a crab chip fan myself, so
Not nearly enough.
my son and I can tear through a bag of crab chips, but there's 10 ounces of potato chips in a bag for $3.99. That's where the real money is in this value-added part to it, in taking a raw material and processing it. You can do that on a relatively small footprint, and that's why I'm really addressing the land issue. So as land values go up, our production per acre needs to go up, and part of that is that other step in getting consumer-ready products as well. All of the Libby pie filling that the country relies on, those are actually Hubbard squashes, and they're produced in about a 50-mile radius, but immediately around the plant. So when you are doing pumpkin pie from canned filling, those couple of years ago, 2 years ago, they had a bit of a crop failure. It wasn't total, but it wasn't a good year. And so we only had 8 months of pie filling. And I don't know how much, well, you noticed, but you could not get a pumpkin pie after about 8 months. There was just no more pie filling. So when you put in processing facilities like that, they have a major impact on the local economy because there's so much other activity. You have year-round jobs in the processing, but also the farms start to change their production to match what's needed going into that plant. Now you need to think about that long term. So in a crop failure year, you certainly don't want everybody growing Hubbard squashes.
Or what could that plant be retooled for to accommodate, something else? I don't know what that is, but it could possibly be.
And if that gets to be something of interest to you, it's worthwhile to go visit Fermanos, because they not only do tomato products, but they also do canned beans as well, so that plant is working on a year-round basis.
Within South Central, is there much variation in land prices? The reason I ask is because I am a very new resident of Shippensburg, which some of our colleagues here have been around for longer than I have been. But what I've been told anecdotally is that there's been people coming from Lancaster down into that area to buy up farms because our land prices down around the Shippensburg area are less expensive than they are in Lancaster, particularly the Anabaptists or the plain folks. Or are we pretty much, or are we sort of gravitating towards pretty homogenous price for land yet?
There's still that migration. So Lancaster, they're selling farms down there for development at incredible prices per acre, and they can come out here. They may only have 40 acres left down there, but they can sell that for another down here and buy 120. And they can buy 120 and still outbid the local neighboring farmer here who wants to buy it.
Yeah, all the Martins and Knowles, which are the most common mailboxes in Lancaster County, their families are all here because there just wasn't enough land.
And in Franklin and Perry.
And then the ones that are here are now looking at going further to Blair and going further into the Juliana region.
Does the quality of the soil decrease as you get away from sort of this belt?
It does. Back to my geographic sections of Pennsylvania. The Ridge and Valley section in the Appalachians is still good. There's not as much good land in the Allegheny Plateau. I mean, for years, people in Crawford County have had a campaign to try to entice Mennonite and Anabaptist communities to leave this area of the state and move to northwestern Pennsylvania because there's land up there that could be farmed, but it's not. But the soil quality is so poor that these communities won't go up there at any price for the land. So these Anabaptist communities will move en masse and migrate to new areas if the soil quality is high. So you'll see them leave here and go to Indiana, to Missouri, and start new kind of colonies, new towns. But they go to areas that have rich farming soils.
Elmer Knoll had a 107-acre farm right on 81 at the 696 exit. And he sold that to developers and bought over 500 acres in Iowa. And that started the community out there. So now we get phone calls from Iowa because all those growers know us. They call us for advice. But that was the land value was enough that he was able to trade 107 acres for over 500. And as he put it, I put an ungodly amount of money in the bank at the same time.
And the same thing in Iowa, in Idaho. Probably for those 500, you probably got 1,000 acres out there. So what about timber? Anybody doing timber? Nobody's doing timber. Too long, too hard of a process. Nobody grows trees or stuff.
Not here.
Okay.
I mean, we have private woodlot owners and we work with them to maximize their production of their woodlots. And some people are very much into that, but we're not doing that.
And where does that?
But in the other parts of Pennsylvania, that's a very big part. And timber prices have rebounded extremely well in the past 6 to 8 months. I mean, what they're getting on the stump now is tremendous compared to 2-3 years ago because the sense is the economy is improving and there's a demand for timber again.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did you want to talk about the MOU? Good.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Just real quickly, there's no changes to this document. You folks asked us to renew this on an annual basis. We've signed it, give the signatures in front of you from our side. So we're simply asking for you to ratify the agreement again for another year.
And I know this was an example that went to CCAP during the presentation from the Ag Committee. I think we're probably the only one, maybe 2 other counties that have done this.
You're really the only county that's doing this,
Yeah.
but what I'm hearing from our leadership on the college side is that in other states, this is a common practice between county government and the land grant college to just have an understanding of the relationship of extension.
And I spoke up at that time
So,
because there were a lot who
Our,
had not.
our leadership is saying this may be a great thing and maybe more commissioners, boards of commissioners would be interested in this.
Yeah.
So that's all good and well. What I'm interested in right now is if you guys are okay with deciding.
Does it get in the way either for better or for worse in your day-to-day operations or?
No, it has not. We've not had any issues in the past year, so maybe we'll encounter some, but it doesn't seem to have caused any issues.
And I think when they are, or if they are, this is, sort of that process, and then you address them in a more formal manner
Right.
than not. So, while there's no, action tomorrow, this can be signed Monday during the workshop, or the board, correct?
Right, if you will, I would appreciate that, and we just brought it up today because tomorrow I can't be at your meeting and
Right.
another meeting, and so if you had any questions, I want to be able to field them today.
So we can take this off the agenda for tomorrow and put it on Mondays for final action?
For me, that would be fine.
I can tell you one of the benefits here on our side is that the grumpiness quotient in the coming out of the controls department has declined noticeably. They are much happier.
That, if, whenever I can make the controller happy, I'm very happy. So
Now, that's public record, so I mean.
well, they know that, so that's fair. So. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anything else for us?
Thank you very much.
I think we all enjoyed the discussion, and so thank you very much.
Thank you all for
Okay,
coming.
thanks.